Welcome back to the channel. If you watch part 1 to 3, get ready, because everything you thought you knew is about to change. And if you're new here, don't worry. The opening will quickly catch you up before we dive into the next chapter of this unforgettable story. A billionaire CEO once humiliated the poor maid holding his twin Bobbies because he believed she had no place in his family. Moments later, his screaming fiancée exposed a lie so monstrous that it shattered everything he thought he knew. The twins were never the maid's children. They were his own. The woman he trusted had stolen them, while the poor maid had risked everything to protect them. Overwhelmed by guilt, the billionaire rejected wealth, reputation, and society's judgment to marry the woman whose loyalty had saved his family. But that fairy tale ending became the beginning of an even darker nightmare. They discovered that the twins' rescue was connected to a secret investigation led by the maid's father, Michael Mitchell, a man believed dead after uncovering a hidden organization that manipulated billionaires, governments, judges, corporations, and powerful families from the shadows. Every journal he left behind revealed another layer of betrayal. A ruthless billionaire named Victor Blackwood hunted them without mercy, only for them to discover that even Victor answered to someone else. As they fought to rescue Grace's kidnapped brother, Noah, mysterious guardians emerged from the darkness. Trusted allies were framed. Hidden codes pointed toward a conspiracy older than anyone imagined, and one terrifying truth became impossible to ignore. The real mastermind had never shown his face. Now the billionaire who gave up everything, the poor maid who became his wife, and the family built through unimaginable sacrifice are about to confront an enemy so powerful that even the world's most feared billionaire bows before him. But why is Noah worth more than every secret document Michael Mitchell left behind? What forgotten truth did a father hide inside his own son? And when the invisible architect finally steps into the light, who will still be alive to witness the truth? The first rays of sunlight stretched across the secluded farmhouse hidden deep within the Virginia mountains. But inside, no one welcomed the morning. Sleep had become a luxury none of them could afford. Grace Mitchell Carter stood quietly beside the kitchen window, her fingers wrapped around the brass compass Michael Mitchell had given her when she was only 10 years old. The engraving on the back had faded with time, but she could still read the words without looking. "Trust your own heart." She closed her eyes. For a brief moment, she wasn't standing inside a safe house, surrounded by enemies. She was a little girl again, running across wildflower fields while her father laughed behind her, pretending not to know where she had hidden his compass during one of their weekend games. Michael always allowed her to believe she had fooled him, only to reveal later that he had watched every step she took. Those innocent games had never been games at all. Years later, Grace finally understood that her father had been quietly teaching observation, patience, and survival long before danger entered their lives. Her eyes opened. Dad knew this day was coming. Behind her, Ethan Carter folded another map across the dining table. The billionaire whose face once appeared on the covers of business magazines no longer resembled the polished executive admired by Wall Street. His tailored Italian suits had been replaced by durable outdoor clothing. His billion-dollar company had been dismantled. His penthouse overlooked by helicopters had been exchanged for a hidden farmhouse protected by coded alarms and reinforced windows. Yet strangely, Ethan had never looked stronger. Losing his fortune had stripped away everything that wasn't real. The only wealth he still possessed sat upstairs sleeping peacefully. His twins, and standing only a few feet away. His wife. Years earlier, he had mistaken kindness for weakness and poverty for insignificance. That arrogance had nearly cost him his children, his future, and the woman who had quietly loved them enough to sacrifice everything. Every painful mistake now lived inside him like a permanent scar, shaping every decision he made. He had sworn over Michael Mitchell's grave that he would never again judge a person's worth by status, wealth, or appearance. "We'll bring Noah home," Ethan said quietly. Grace looked at him. You still believe that? I don't believe. He met her eyes. I promised. Across the room, Lucas Reed pinned another photograph onto the investigation board. Disgraced by the government, abandoned by the bureau he had once served with pride, Lucas possessed almost nothing except the truth Michael Mitchell had died protecting. Friends called him obsessed. Enemies called him dangerous. Michael had once called him something entirely different. Reliable. That single word had become the reason Lucas refused to quit. Amelia Hayes sat surrounded by stacks of journals, encrypted drives, and handwritten notes. 9 years earlier, the world had attended her funeral. Michael had insisted she disappear after discovering her name on a list of people marked for elimination by the organization. The false death had cost Amelia her career, her family, and her identity, but it had preserved the only person capable of decoding the evidence Michael left behind. Every sleepless night since then had been spent preparing for this moment. Charles Donovan adjusted his glasses as he carefully cataloged every recovered document. I've finished organizing the lighthouse files. Grace looked toward him. Anything new? Charles hesitated. Not yet. He paused. But Michael kept returning to one sentence. Amelia slowly raised her head. The child remembers what the man forgets. The room became silent. None of them understood those words. Not yet. Far away, in a luxurious estate protected by layers of private security, Noah Mitchell stood alone before an antique grandfather clock. He could have mistaken the mansion for a museum. Marble floors reflected the morning light. Original paintings worth millions lined the walls. Crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings. It looked nothing like a prison. Yet every door was locked. Every hallway watched. Every smile carefully calculated. Victor Blackwood entered without speaking. For the first time since Noah's capture, the billionaire who commanded private armies looked uneasy. They're almost here, Victor said. Noah folded his arms. Who? Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he straightened his jacket like a subordinate preparing for inspection. Then he spoke with quiet respect. The only person I've ever answered to. Victor Blackwood had never feared another man. That was what the world believed. For nearly 2 decades, governments had negotiated with him instead of confronting him. Fortune 500 CEOs measured their success against his empire. Intelligence agencies tracked his movements but rarely interfered. Newspapers described him as a brilliant billionaire investor and philanthropist. Those who truly knew him whispered another title. The finisher. If Victor accepted an assignment, it was completed. No exceptions. Yet now, standing inside one of the most secure estates in America, Victor Blackwood adjusted his tie like a nervous employee, awaiting an annual review. Noah Mitchell noticed every detail. You look scared, Noah said quietly. Victor almost smiled. I look prepared. No. Noah shook his head. You look afraid. Victor looked toward the hallway. Fear keeps intelligent men alive. Narrative exposition drifted into Victor's hidden past. 32 years earlier, Victor Blackwood had been a gifted young entrepreneur drowning beneath impossible debt after the collapse of his father's manufacturing company. Every bank rejected him. Every investor walked away. Then one afternoon, a retired federal judge named Nathaniel Cross invited him to lunch. The judge never offered charity. Instead, he offered opportunity. Within 6 months, Victor's business miraculously recovered. Competitors vanished through legal acquisitions. Investors appeared from nowhere. Government contracts quietly arrived. Victor believed he had built his empire through brilliance. It took years before he realized someone else had been quietly moving pieces across the board. By then, Leaving was no longer an option. The estate's massive oak door slowly opened. Every guard standing in the hallway immediately straightened. House staff lowered their eyes. Even Victor stepped aside. Judge Nathaniel Cross entered without bodyguards. His dark navy suit was perfectly pressed. His silver hair framed a calm face that radiated warmth rather than authority. To the public, he was America's most respected retired Supreme Court justice. To the organization, he was simply known as the founder. Nathaniel smiled gently at Noah. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." Noah didn't respond. Nathaniel sat across from him, instead of behind the larger chair positioned at the head of the room. An intentional gesture. One designed to make conversation feel equal. "You remind me of your father." Noah finally spoke. "Everyone says that." Nathaniel nodded. "They're right. You knew him." "I admired him." Noah laughed bitterly. "If you admired him, why am I your prisoner?" Nathaniel's smile faded slightly. "Because admiration and necessity rarely walk together." Back at Amelia's farmhouse, Ethan stood outside splitting firewood. The repetitive motion helped him think. Every swing of the axe reminded him of a different life. Board meetings, private jets, luxury galas, magazine interviews. He had once believed success meant owning the tallest building. Now success meant protecting the people sleeping safely inside a hidden farmhouse. Grace stepped onto the porch. "You've been out here for an hour." "I know." She gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You blame yourself." "I always will." Narrative exposition reached back to the day Ethan first met Grace. She had arrived at his mansion carrying nothing more than a small duffel bag and a recommendation letter from an elderly housekeeper who had known Grace's late mother. Ethan barely looked at her during the interview. His attention remained fixed on business calls worth millions of dollars. Grace accepted the position with quiet dignity, never imagining that the frightened twins she would later protect were actually Ethan's own children. Had Ethan looked beyond appearances that first day, he might have recognized the extraordinary strength hidden beneath her humble smile. That failure remained one of his deepest regrets. Grace leaned against the porch railing. "My father never blamed himself." Ethan looked surprised. "He blamed his choices." She smiled sadly. "He used to tell us, guilt freezes people, responsibility moves them." Ethan quietly repeated the words. "Responsibility moves them." Inside, Amelia suddenly looked up from Michael's journal. "Lucas." He walked over immediately. "What is it?" She pointed toward a paragraph Michael had partially burned before hiding the notebook. "Look at the dates." Lucas studied them carefully. "They're adoption records." "Exactly." Charles frowned. "I thought Project Lighthouse tracked gifted children." Amelia nodded slowly. "It does. But Michael wasn't following the children. He was following who adopted them." The room became silent. Lucas felt a chill run through him. If that's true, then the organization has been placing children into carefully selected families. Grace slowly entered. "What kind of families?" Amelia answered quietly. "Powerful ones." Narrative exposition layered deeper foreshadowing. Over 12 years, Michael Mitchell had quietly collected newspaper clippings from across the country. At first glance, they appeared unrelated: successful senators, technology founders, decorated military officers, celebrated surgeons, influential judges. Yet beside many names, Michael had scribbled identical symbols. Amelia originally believed they represented financial connections. Now another possibility emerged. Many of those powerful adults had adopted children decades earlier through agencies connected, directly or indirectly, to organizations funded by Eleanor Ashford. Michael had never finished proving the pattern, but he had left enough evidence to suggest that Project Lighthouse had never simply observed exceptional children. Someone had been deciding where they would grow up. Grace whispered, "My father wasn't chasing corruption. He was chasing stolen futures." Hundreds of miles away, Nathaniel Cross slowly poured tea for Noah. "You've been wondering why you're valuable." Noah remained silent. Nathaniel continued, "When you were 7 years old, your father showed you something." Noah frowned. "I don't remember." "I know." Nathaniel calmly stirred his tea. "He wanted it that way." A faint memory flashed through Noah's mind. A snowy cabin. A locked wooden box. His father's voice. "One day you'll understand." The image disappeared before he could grasp it. Nathaniel noticed Noah's expression. "It will come back." Victor quietly shifted his weight. Nathaniel looked toward him. "Leave us." Victor hesitated only briefly before obeying. As the doors closed behind him, Noah realized something terrifying. The world's most feared billionaire had just taken an order without question. Nathaniel leaned forward. "Your father and I disagreed about one thing." Noah stared at him. "What?" Nathaniel answered with unsettling calm. "He believed people deserved freedom. I believe people deserve stability." Noah frowned. "I don't understand." "You will. Very soon." At that same moment, hidden deep within the surrounding forest, the mysterious guardian watched the estate through a high-powered scope. Unlike previous days, he wasn't merely observing. He quietly unfolded an old military map. Several escape routes had already been marked. Supply caches had been buried years earlier. Safe houses circled in red ink. This wasn't preparation made over days. It had been planned over decades. The guardian looked toward the mansion, then toward a faded family photograph tucked inside his jacket. Michael Mitchell smiled from the picture. The guardian whispered, "I couldn't save you, but I'll save your children." He chambered a round into his suppressed rifle. Not to attack, to prepare. Because after 20 years of hiding, the war Michael Mitchell began was finally about to become his own. The first shot never came. The mysterious guardian lay hidden beneath a camouflage net overlooking the sprawling Ashford estate, his rifle trained on the winding road that led to the mansion. Through the scope, he could clearly see armed patrols changing shifts with military precision. He didn't pull the trigger. He never intended to. He wasn't there to kill. He was there to make sure Noah Mitchell stayed alive. Far below, luxury SUVs entered and exited the estate while helicopters circled lazily overhead, creating the illusion of routine security. To anyone else, it looked impossible to breach. The guardian quietly smiled. There isn't a fortress built by man that can't be entered by another man. Narrative exposition slipped backward nearly 22 years. Michael Mitchell and his younger brother had once served together in a classified military reconnaissance unit before Michael left to join federal law enforcement. While Michael became known for solving impossible investigations, his younger brother mastered infiltration, surveillance, and long-term undercover operations. During one dangerous mission overseas, they made a promise beneath a ruined bridge after narrowly escaping an ambush. If one brother ever disappeared, the other would protect the family without seeking recognition. Neither imagined that promise would someday define the rest of their lives. Back inside the farmhouse, Amelia spread dozens of adoption records across the dining table. Colored strings now connected photographs, charities, judges, hospitals, and children's homes. Charles stared at the growing web. My God! Grace stepped closer. What is it? Charles slowly removed his glasses. Michael wasn't mapping money. He was mapping generations. Lucas leaned over the table. Explain. Charles pointed toward several photographs. This senator adopted through one agency. This governor used another. This billionaire adopted from overseas. This federal prosecutor adopted domestically. Grace interrupted. They're unrelated. Exactly. Charles nodded. They're supposed to be. He traced the strings connecting every family. But every adoption eventually passes through organizations funded by Eleanor Ashford. Silence filled the room. Ethan stared at the board. You think they were placing children into powerful homes? Amelia answered carefully. No. I think they were choosing which powerful homes deserved certain children. Narrative exposition deepened the mystery. Years before Michael disappeared, he noticed something statisticians often overlooked. Children classified as exceptionally gifted, those with extraordinary memories, unusual analytical abilities, or remarkable emotional intelligence, frequently vanished from ordinary adoption pathways. They resurfaced years later inside influential families whose public success seemed almost impossible to explain. Michael never concluded that the children created that success. Instead, he feared someone was deliberately pairing extraordinary minds with positions of future influence. The pattern was incomplete, but every new discovery strengthened his conviction that Project Lighthouse had never been charity. It had been long-term social engineering. Grace looked pale. They were shaping the future. Lucas nodded slowly. One child at a time. Upstairs, Ethan quietly checked on the twins. The little boy clutched a stuffed bear Grace had sewn by hand during the months they spent hiding. His sister slept peacefully beside him. Ethan smiled despite everything. For a brief moment, the weight of conspiracies, billionaires, and hidden judges disappeared. He knelt beside their beds. I'll fix this. His daughter stirred without waking. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. Narrative exposition foreshadowed future tragedy. Michael Mitchell often said that children remembered love long after they forgot fear. Ethan had once dismissed those words as sentimental. Since losing his fortune and gaining a family, he finally understood them. The twins would never remember luxury cars or expensive vacations, but they would remember who stayed beside them when darkness arrived. That realization quietly transformed Ethan into the father Michael had hoped he might someday become. Downstairs, Amelia suddenly froze. Her laptop emitted a soft alert. Someone had remotely accessed one of Michael's archived databases. Lucas immediately moved beside her. Can you trace it? I'm trying. Lines of encrypted code raced across the screen. Then, the connection disappeared. Charles frowned. Did they steal anything? Amelia's expression changed. No. Grace looked confused. Then why connect it all? Amelia slowly turned the monitor. They uploaded something. A new folder had appeared. Its title read, For Michael's Family. Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. Lucas scanned the file for hidden malware. Nothing. He nodded. Open it. Inside rested a single video. Grace clicked play. The screen flickered. A familiar face appeared. The mysterious guardian. He wore a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. His beard had turned gray. A scar crossed his left cheek. His voice remained deliberately calm. If you're seeing this, then I've run out of time to stay hidden. Grace leaned forward. The man continued. My name doesn't matter. What matters is this. Judge Nathaniel Cross already knows you're following Project Lighthouse. Ethan frowned. How does he know that? The video answered almost immediately. Because someone close to Michael betrayed him before he died. The room went completely silent. Grace whispered, "No." The Guardian continued, "Do not accuse each other. The betrayal happened years ago. The person responsible believes Michael never discovered the truth." Lucas looked at Amelia. "Did he?" Before anyone could answer, the recording continued. "He did. And he forgave them." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "That sounds exactly like Dad." The Guardian nodded, almost as if hearing her. "He forgave them. Because he believed they had been manipulated rather than corrupted." The recording ended. No explanation. No identity. Only another mystery. Across the country, Noah sat across from Judge Nathaniel Cross once again. Nathaniel calmly opened an old wooden box. Inside rested dozens of children's drawings. One drawing caught Noah's attention. It had been signed in clumsy handwriting. Noah Mitchell. His breathing stopped. "I drew that." "You did." Nathaniel handed it to him. Noah stared at the picture. It showed a mountain cabin, a lake, his father, and another man standing beside Michael. The second man's face had been drawn with surprising detail. A military bracelet wrapped around his wrist. The same bracelet Grace had recognized. Noah whispered, "I know him." A memory surged forward. Snow. Laughter. His father kneeling beside him. "If anything happens to me, you'll always be safe with Uncle Ben." Noah's eyes widened. "Uncle." The memory shattered before the face became clear. Nathaniel watched him closely. "Almost." Noah looked up. "You knew." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "I've been waiting for that memory." Outside the estate, hidden among the trees, the Guardian lowered his binoculars. He had seen Noah hold the drawing through the study window. His hands trembled. For 20 years, he had lived without hearing his own name spoken by the children he had protected. A single tear rolled down his weathered face. He whispered into the wind, "You remembered me." Not completely, but enough. The time for hiding was ending. The time for family was finally beginning. The explosion shattered the silence before sunrise. A deafening blast erupted on the eastern side of the Ashford estate, sending a massive fireball into the sky. Security alarms screamed through the compound. Armed guards rushed toward the smoke, convinced the estate was under attack. It wasn't. It was a diversion. High above the estate, hidden beneath thick branches overlooking the security perimeter, the mysterious Guardian calmly lowered a small remote detonator. His face remained unreadable. He had placed the charges 2 nights earlier, not to kill anyone, but to redirect every security team to the wrong side of the property. He checked his watch. 3 minutes. That was all he needed. Narrative exposition carried the story into the past. Benjamin Mitchell had once been considered one of the finest reconnaissance specialists in the military. Unlike soldiers who relied on overwhelming force, Benjamin believed the greatest victory was convincing an enemy to move exactly where you wanted them. Michael often joked that while he solved mysteries, Benjamin created them. Their contrasting talents made them nearly unstoppable together. Years later, when Michael uncovered the organization behind Project Lighthouse, he realized only someone capable of disappearing completely could infiltrate it. The brothers made the most painful decision of their lives. Benjamin's death would be staged, Only Michael would know he survived. Grace and Noah would grow up believing their uncle had died serving his country, because that lie was the only thing keeping him alive inside the enemy's world. Back at the farmhouse, Grace stared at the paused video left by the mysterious guardian. Her fingers rested on the screen. She whispered, "Uncle Ben." The name felt strange after so many years. She remembered the military funeral, the folded American flag, her father's quiet tears. She had been only 8 years old. Narrative exposition anchored the emotional foundation. Michael Mitchell had never lied casually. The fake funeral remained the only deliberate deception he ever carried into his family. After Benjamin infiltrated the organization, every official record declared him dead during a classified overseas operation. Grace had watched her father silently stand before an empty casket, believing he had lost his younger brother forever. Only now would she one day learn those tears had been real, not because Benjamin was dead, but because Michael understood he might never again embrace his brother in public. Their sacrifice had purchased 2 decades of hidden protection for Michael's children. Grace looked toward Lucas. "My father carried this alone." Lucas nodded. "He couldn't risk telling anyone. Not even me." Lucas hesitated. "Especially not you." Grace lowered her head. For the first time, she understood that her father's silence had always been another form of love. Across the table, Amelia suddenly froze. She had been examining another section of Michael's journal. "Everyone." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You need to see this." The page contained several names connected by arrows. Michael, Benjamin, Amelia, Lucas, Charles. Then another name circled repeatedly. Nathaniel Cross. Beside it, Michael had written, "Never investigate him directly. He wants investigators to look at him, find the architect behind the architect." Charles frowned. "I thought Nathaniel was the mastermind." "So did Michael." Amelia slowly turned another page. "He changed his mind." The room fell silent. Ethan stepped forward. "Meaning what?" Amelia swallowed. "It means Nathaniel may not be the top." Lucas stared at the page. "You're telling me there's someone above the man Victor Blackwood obeys?" Amelia nodded. Michael believed so. The realization struck everyone like another explosion. Every battle they had fought, every sacrifice, every journal, had still not reached the true enemy. Meanwhile, inside the Ashford estate, Victor Blackwood rushed toward the smoking courtyard. Security teams flooded the eastern gardens. Nathaniel Cross stood calmly beside a large window, watching the chaos unfold. Victor looked irritated. "We're under attack." Nathaniel never looked away from the fire. "No. We're being studied." Victor frowned. "What?" Nathaniel finally turned. "The person responsible doesn't want casualties. They want our attention." Victor's expression hardened. "Benjamin." Nathaniel offered a faint smile. "He's finally becoming impatient." Victor immediately reached for his phone. "I'll send every available team after him." "No." Nathaniel's answer came instantly. Victor blinked. "No." Nathaniel slowly walked toward him. "If Benjamin Mitchell reveals himself now, it's because Michael's children are finally ready." Victor remained silent. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. "And if they're ready, then we are behind schedule." Narrative exposition deepened Nathaniel's philosophy. Unlike Victor, who believed power came from control through fear, Nathaniel believed history was shaped by patience. Decades meant little to him. He viewed nations the way gardeners viewed forests, something cultivated slowly over generations. Project Lighthouse was never designed to create immediate influence. It existed to place extraordinary children where, 30 years later, they might quietly alter the future. Michael Mitchell threatened that vision not because he exposed crimes, but because he understood the blueprint before it was complete. Back at the farmhouse, Ethan quietly stepped outside. He needed air. He walked toward the old barn, where his pickup truck remained hidden. As he reached the doors, he noticed something unusual. A fresh military ranger not tied around the handle. His heartbeat quickened. He slowly untied it. Inside rested another envelope. Unlike previous messages, this one contained no photograph. Only a handwritten letter. It began, "Ethan. Not Mr. Carter. Not Billionaire. Simply Ethan." He continued reading. "If Grace has chosen to trust you, then Michael was right about you. I owe you an apology. For years I believed you were too proud to become the man she deserved. You proved me wrong. Protect her. The days ahead will demand more from you than losing your fortune ever did. When the time comes, choose Grace over revenge, even if revenge feels justified. Benjamin." Ethan read the final sentence again. Choose Grace over revenge. He frowned. Why would Benjamin write that? Unless he already knew a moment was coming when Ethan would have to make that impossible choice. Deep foreshadowing settled quietly into Ethan's heart. Inside the farmhouse, Amelia suddenly gasped. "What is it?" Grace asked. Amelia stared at the computer screen. "I finally decrypted the final lighthouse file." Everyone gathered around. The screen displayed a classified roster. Hundreds of children's names. Some crossed out. Some highlighted. Some marked recovered. Then Grace saw two familiar entries. Amelia Hayes. Status recovered. Below it, Noah Mitchell. Status pending retrieval. Grace's face turned pale. What does pending retrieval mean? Before anyone could answer, another line appeared automatically at the bottom of the screen. A hidden file unlocked itself. It contained only 5 words. Noah remembers. Retrieve immediately. At that exact moment, hundreds of miles away, Noah suddenly clutched his head in pain. Fragments of memory flooded back. A mountain cabin. A hidden basement. His father kneeling before a steel vault. Benjamin standing guard outside. Michael placing a small object into Noah's tiny hands. Then whispering words Noah had forgotten for years. Never tell anyone where the key sleeps. Noah's eyes flew open. For the first time, he remembered. And somewhere else in the mansion, Nathaniel Cross smiled. Because he knew. Noah had remembered too. Benjamin Mitchell had spent 20 years as a ghost. Tonight the ghost stepped into the light. The moon hung low over the Virginia mountains as Ethan, Grace, Lucas, Amelia and Charles quietly left the farmhouse after decrypting Michael Mitchell's final lighthouse file. Every instinct told them Noah's memories had awakened, and if Michael's notes were correct, the organization would move him before sunrise. The forest was unnaturally still. Grace stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" Ethan listened. "Nothing." "Exactly." Before anyone could react, a low whistle echoed through the trees. Lucas immediately drew his pistol. Ambush. Dark figures appeared between the pines. Laser sights swept across the group. Grace instinctively stepped in front of Amelia. Ethan pulled Grace behind him. For several tense seconds, nobody fired. Then a deep voice emerged from the darkness. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead." A tall man stepped into the moonlight. Gray beard. Military posture. Weathered face. The same Ranger bracelet Grace had seen in every anonymous package. Grace's breathing stopped. The man slowly removed his cap. His eyes met hers. "I'm sorry it took so long." Tears instantly filled Grace's eyes. "Uncle Ben." Benjamin Mitchell smiled through tears. "You still recognize me?" Grace ran toward him without thinking. Benjamin caught her as she broke down crying. For over 20 years, she had believed she was embracing a dead man. Benjamin held her tightly. "I'm sorry. I couldn't come home. I couldn't even come to your graduation. I wasn't there when you married Ethan. I wasn't there when Michael—" His voice cracked. "When my brother died." Grace held him even tighter. "You were alive. You were alive all this time." Benjamin closed his eyes. "I promised Michael I'd stay hidden until there was no other choice." Narrative exposition quietly anchored the emotional core. Benjamin Mitchell had watched Grace grow from a distance. He attended her high school graduation disguised among the crowd. He watched Ethan and Grace's wedding from the far end of the church grounds through binoculars, smiling as Michael's dream of seeing his daughter loved finally came true. He secretly left birthday gifts for the twins, always making sure they appeared anonymously. Every sacrifice cut deeper than the last, yet breaking cover would have destroyed 2 decades of infiltration and endangered everyone Michael loved. Benjamin had carried that burden alone because he believed some promises were worth more than a lifetime of recognition. Lucas stepped forward. "So it's really you?" Benjamin nodded. "Lucas, you've gotten older." Lucas laughed softly. "We both have." Benjamin turned toward Ethan. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Finally, Benjamin extended his hand. "I judged you unfairly." Ethan accepted it. "I deserved some of it." Benjamin shook his head. "No. I judged the man you were." He looked Ethan directly in the eyes. "But Michael saw the man you would become." Grace smiled through her tears. "My father believed in him before anyone else." Benjamin nodded. "He told me once. Money made Ethan powerful. Losing it might finally make him good." Ethan looked down. He was right. Benjamin reached into his jacket and removed a folded military map. "There isn't much time." He spread it across the hood of Ethan's truck. "This is Ashford Manor." Everyone leaned closer. "I've spent 20 years mapping every tunnel, every escape route, every blind spot." Lucas studied the drawings. "This is impossible." Benjamin smiled faintly. "No. It's patience." He pointed toward a hidden service tunnel beneath the estate. "This leads directly beneath the library." Grace looked surprised. "The room where Noah is being held." Benjamin nodded. "Not for long." He remembered. Everyone looked at him. Benjamin continued. The moment Noah's memory started returning, Nathaniel Cross accelerated his timetable. Charles frowned. What exactly did Noah remember? Benjamin's expression darkened. "I don't know. But Michael believed Noah witnessed something when he was 7 years old." "What?" Benjamin slowly folded the map. "Something powerful enough to destroy an empire." The words hung heavily in the cold night air. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. We're already over 400. Your support helps bring the next chapters to life. And don't forget to leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Benjamin's satellite phone suddenly vibrated. He glanced at the screen. His face changed. Lucas noticed immediately. "What happened?" Benjamin answered quietly. I have a source inside. He looked at Grace. They're moving Noah. When? Benjamin locked eyes with her. They're moving him now. At that exact moment, hundreds of miles away inside Ashford Manor, Judge Nathaniel Cross stood before a massive stone fireplace, while Victor Blackwood waited silently behind him. Nathaniel held a worn leather folder. Inside were photographs dating back nearly 50 years. One showed a much younger Nathaniel standing beside a leaner Ashford. Another showed Victor as a frightened young businessman. A third showed Michael Mitchell. Victor frowned. You kept all of them. Nathaniel closed the folder. I keep history. Victor lowered his voice. Benjamin has resurfaced. I know. We should eliminate him. Nathaniel slowly turned. No. Victor looked confused. No. Nathaniel walked toward the window, overlooking the estate. You still don't understand. Victor remained silent. Nathaniel smiled faintly. I was never the beginning. Victor's eyes widened. What? For the first time in decades, even Victor Blackwood looked genuinely shaken. Nathaniel spoke almost reverently. I inherited this organization. It existed long before I was invited into it. Victor whispered. Who invited you? Nathaniel's calm expression grew unexpectedly solemn. I've never met them. Silence. Victor stared at him. You've never met them. Nathaniel slowly nodded. I only receive instructions. Victor took an involuntary step backward. The man he had obeyed his entire life answered to someone else. Nathaniel quietly added, they are known only as the Circle. The room fell silent. Somewhere beyond the estate walls, Benjamin Mitchell suddenly looked toward the horizon, as if sensing the darkness growing around them. Without realizing it, Michael's children had just stepped into a war far older than their family, and far deadlier than anything they had imagined. The underground tunnel had not been opened in nearly 30 years. Dust drifted from the cracked concrete ceiling as Benjamin Mitchell slowly pushed aside a rusted steel grate concealed beneath thick ivy. Cold air rushed upward from the darkness below. He switched on a small flashlight. The narrow passage stretched into blackness. Benjamin looked back at the group. This tunnel was built during the original construction of the estate. Lucas raised an eyebrow. How do you know? Benjamin gave a tired smile. Because I helped map it. No one spoke. For the first time, everyone fully understood how deeply Benjamin had buried himself inside the enemy's world. Grace squeezed Ethan's hand. You've been carrying this alone for 20 years. Benjamin looked away. I carried it because your father asked me to. Narrative exposition quietly deepened the emotional weight. 20 years earlier, Benjamin and Michael Mitchell had stood inside this very tunnel with rolled blueprints spread across a wooden crate. Michael had already begun uncovering evidence that a powerful criminal syndicate was disguising illegal operations behind charitable foundations, shell corporations, and elite business partnerships. Knowing he was being watched, Michael convinced Benjamin to disappear from public life and infiltrate the organization from within. They spent 3 nights memorizing every hidden corridor beneath the estate. Before leaving, Michael placed his hand on Benjamin's shoulder and said, "If they ever come after my children, don't save my investigation. Save my family." Those words had become Benjamin's only mission. Benjamin stepped into the darkness. Stay close. No flashlights unless I tell you. They descended one after another. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and rust. Old electrical conduits lined the walls. Some sections had partially collapsed. Others remained surprisingly intact. Benjamin suddenly raised his fist. Everyone froze. Above them, footsteps, heavy boots. Security teams were moving across the courtyard overhead. Benjamin whispered, "They're changing patrols." Lucas glanced at his watch. "They're early." Benjamin frowned. "No, they're nervous." That meant Noah had already started remembering. Far ahead, the tunnel split into 3 directions. Benjamin pointed left. Dead end. Then right. Flooded. Finally, straight ahead. The library. Grace whispered. "How much farther?" 5 minutes. As they continued forward, Noah sat alone inside the estate's private archive room. His breathing had become uneven. Fragments of memory returned faster now. His father's voice. Snow falling outside a mountain cabin. A small brass lantern. Benjamin laughing as he taught Noah how to tie a ranger knot. Then another memory. Michael kneeling before him, holding both of Noah's shoulders. "Listen carefully. One day bad people will ask you where the key is. Tell them there isn't one." The memory faded again. Noah opened his eyes. "There isn't." His heartbeat quickened. "There isn't a key." Back inside the tunnel, Benjamin stopped before a reinforced steel door hidden behind old utility pipes. He pulled a weathered key from around his neck. Grace looked at it. "My father made that." Benjamin nodded. "He made 2. The lock clicked open. Beyond it stretched a narrow maintenance corridor running beneath the mansion. Benjamin looked at everyone. From here, absolute silence. They advanced carefully. Voices echoed faintly through the ceiling vents. Victor Blackwood. Nathaniel Cross. Several security officers. Benjamin counted quietly under his breath. When the last footsteps faded, he motioned everyone forward. At the end of the corridor stood another hatch. Benjamin slowly pushed it upward. They emerged behind towering bookshelves inside the estate's private library. The room appeared empty. Grace scanned the shelves. "My father was here." Benjamin nodded. "He met me here many times." Charles stared at the carved fireplace. This whole room was their meeting place. Suddenly, a muffled sound. Grace turned. Noah. Behind a reinforced glass partition at the far end of the library, Noah looked up in disbelief. "Grace." She sprinted toward him. Tears filled Noah's eyes. "You actually came." Grace pressed her hands against the glass. "I promised." Benjamin immediately examined the electronic locking system. "It's newer." Amelia joined him. "I can bypass it." "You've got 60 seconds." Lucas and Ethan positioned themselves at opposite entrances. Weapons ready. The keypad flashed. Amelia connected a small decoding device. Numbers rolled across the display. "Hurry," Lucas whispered. Benjamin's instinct suddenly screamed. He turned toward the hallway. Too quiet. Far too quiet. "Ethan." Ethan looked over. "What?" Benjamin's voice dropped. "We've been allowed in." The realization struck everyone at once. This wasn't a breach. It was a trap. The library doors burst open. Victor Blackwood walked in slowly, applauding. "I have to admit, that was impressive." Dozens of armed guards poured into the room behind him. Victor smiled at Benjamin. "You hid for 20 years." His eyes shifted toward Grace and Ethan. "And all it took to bring you out Was family. Benjamin stepped forward. Noah first. Victor laughed softly. You still think you're negotiating? He looked at Ethan. You've been chasing revenge for so long. Ethan raised his weapon. No. I've been chasing my family. Victor spread his arms. Then come and take them. The room exploded into chaos. Lucas fired first, forcing the guards behind marble columns. Benjamin overturned a massive oak table to create cover. Grace rushed toward Noah as Amelia continued hacking the lock. The electronic display flashed red. Access DNID. Benjamin shouted. Again. Amelia's fingers flew across the keypad. Outside the library, more guards were racing toward the gunfire. Victor calmly stepped behind cover and smiled. You're exactly where I wanted you. Then Noah suddenly remembered the final words Michael had whispered years ago. He looked directly at Grace. His voice trembled. There never was a key. Everyone stopped for a split second. Noah continued. It's a sentence. Benjamin's eyes widened. Michael hadn't hidden an object. He had hidden a living password. The truth that Michael had protected for decades was never locked inside a safe. It was locked inside the memory of a 7-year-old boy. And now, the boy remembered. There never was a key. Noah's voice echoed through the smoke-filled library. It was a sentence. For one suspended heartbeat, even the gunfire seemed to disappear. Benjamin Mitchell stared at his nephew. Michael, you actually did it. Narrative exposition reached back to the winter Noah turned 7. Michael Mitchell had learned that written evidence could be stolen, copied, forged, or destroyed. Digital files could be hacked. Safe deposit boxes could be emptied. Witnesses could be bribed or intimidated. So he devised something no criminal could easily seize, a memory. He wrapped a crucial passphrase inside a bedtime story Noah loved, repeating it naturally over several days so the words would settle into the child's mind without feeling like a secret. Benjamin had questioned the plan, worried a 7-year-old might forget. Michael only smiled and replied, Children forget instructions. They never forget stories that make them feel safe. Michael never explained where the phrase led, only that if Noah ever remembered it, the family would know the time had come. Benjamin snapped back to the present. Noah, don't say it. Victor Blackwood's eyes narrowed. He understood immediately. Whatever Noah remembered, he could not be allowed to speak it. Take the boy alive. More guards flooded into the library. Bullets shattered priceless glass cabinets. Books rained from the shelves. Lucas fired controlled bursts, forcing the guards back. Charles dragged Amelia behind a marble pillar as she desperately continued bypassing the electronic lock. The screen flashed. Access granted. The reinforced glass door slid open. Grace rushed forward. Noah. She wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in months, brother and sister held each other. Noah buried his face against her shoulder. I knew you'd come. I never stopped believing. Grace fought back tears. You're going home. Victor's voice thundered across the room. No. He stepped from cover, firing toward the doorway. Benjamin intercepted him, returning fire with remarkable precision. Years of military discipline had not faded. Every shot forced Victor back. Move, Benjamin shouted. Get Noah out. The group sprinted toward the maintenance corridor. Victor growled in frustration. You're not leaving this estate. He grabbed a radio. Seal every tunnel. Benjamin looked toward Ethan. Their eyes met. No words were needed. Benjamin already knew what had to happen. He pulled a small satchel from beneath his jacket. Lucas immediately recognized it. Benjamin. No. Benjamin smiled faintly. You're taking them. What about you? Benjamin looked at Grace. Then at Noah. Finally, at the sleeping innocents, he imagined waiting back at the farmhouse, Ethan and Grace's twins. My brother asked me to protect his family. He placed the satchel into Ethan's hands. Inside were hard drives, handwritten journals, and an old leather notebook bearing Michael Mitchell's initials. This is everything I couldn't send. Ethan stared at him. You're coming with us. Benjamin shook his head. If I leave now, they'll be right behind you. Grace grabbed his arm. No. I just found you. I'm not losing you again. Benjamin gently cupped her face. When you were little, you used to ask your father why heroes always left. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Benjamin smiled. Michael always answered. Because someone has to make sure everyone else gets home. Grace broke down. Please. Benjamin kissed her forehead. Tell your children. Their great-uncle loved them. The sound of boots thundered down the hallway. Hundreds of them. Benjamin calmly reloaded his rifle. Then he looked at Ethan. Promise me. Ethan struggled to speak. I promise. Say it. I'll protect them. Benjamin nodded. Good. Then he pushed the emergency security gate closed between himself and the others. Metal slammed into place. Grace screamed. Uncle Ben. Benjamin never turned around. He simply raised one hand in farewell. Then walked toward the approaching guards. Narrator's break. If this story has kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. We're already past 400. Your support means a lot and helps bring the next chapters to life. Also, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now back to the story. Victor emerged from the smoke. He looked at Benjamin with unexpected respect. You could have escaped. Benjamin smiled. My brother raised me better than that. Victor sighed. I truly hoped we'd never meet like this. Benjamin answered. So did I. Without another word. The gunfight erupted. The tunnel echoed with explosions. Concrete shattered. Lights burst overhead. Grace pounded helplessly against the locked security gate. Etienne. We have to go back. Ethan wrapped both arms around her. If we stay, he dies for nothing. Benjamin's rifle continued firing. Then slower. Then slower still. Finally, silence. Only smoke drifted beneath the steel gate. Grace collapsed to her knees. No. No. Noah stood frozen. His lips trembled. He saved us. Lucas quietly removed his cap. Charles bowed his head. Even Amelia couldn't stop crying. For several moments, no one moved. Benjamin Mitchell, the uncle they had only just found, was gone. Ethan finally forced himself to stand. We honor him by finishing what Michael started. Noah suddenly looked up. The sentence. Everyone turned toward him. You remember it. He nodded slowly. I know where it goes. Benjamin's leather notebook suddenly vibrated inside Ethan's satchel. Amelia opened it. A hidden electronic panel lit up. One message appeared. Voice authentication required. Noah swallowed. He spoke the sentence Michael had hidden inside his childhood story. The brightest lighthouse shines where no map can see. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then, the notebook emitted a soft chime. Coordinates slowly appeared across the screen. A remote mountain location. Grace whispered, "My father's cabin." Benjamin had once smiled in Noah's drawing when they stood outside that cabin. Michael had hidden more than memories there. He had hidden the final truth. Miles behind them, rescue teams searched the smoking tunnel. Victor Blackwood walked through the debris. Bodies lay scattered across the corridor. But one body was never found. Victor frowned. He stared at a narrow maintenance shaft, barely wide enough for one man. A faint smear of fresh blood disappeared into the darkness. Victor slowly smiled. "So, you survived." Far above, hidden beneath the forest canopy several miles away, a wounded man collapsed against an old oak tree. His shoulder bled heavily. His breathing was ragged. With trembling hands, he pulled a small photograph from his pocket. Michael, Grace, Noah, himself. Benjamin smiled weakly. "I kept my promise." His eyes slowly closed. The photograph slipped into the leaves. No one knew where he was. Everyone believed he was dead. And somewhere in the distance, a lone figure quietly stepped from the shadows and looked down at Benjamin's unconscious body. The stranger whispered only 4 words. "I've finally found you." The screen faded to black. The mountain cabin looked exactly as Noah remembered. Snow no longer covered the roof. The wooden porch had weathered under years of wind and sun. The old swing Michael had built with his own hands creaked gently in the evening breeze, though no one sat in it. For several long moments, no one spoke. Grace slowly stepped onto the porch. Tears welled in her eyes. "Dad." Her fingers brushed across the faded wooden railing. She could almost hear Michael laughing as he grilled hamburgers outside every 4th of July. She remembered him teaching Noah how to fish in the nearby creek. She remembered Ethan proposing to her on this very porch after asking Michael for his blessing. Every corner of the cabin held a memory. Now, it also held answers. Narrative exposition anchored the emotional foundation. Michael Mitchell had purchased the cabin 15 years before his death using cash through a small trust established by his late father. To everyone else, it was a peaceful vacation home where the family escaped the pressures of city life. In reality, Michael quietly reinforced its foundations, installed hidden electrical systems, and built a concealed archive beneath it over several summers. Grace remembered helping him paint the walls as a teenager, never realizing her father occasionally disappeared into the basement for hours after she fell asleep. She thought he was repairing plumbing. In truth, he was preparing for the day his children might need the truth more than they needed him. Benjamin's old notebook vibrated again. The screen illuminated. Voice authentication required. Noah swallowed. His hands trembled. "I remember now." Everyone turned toward him. Benjamin's words echoed inside Grace's mind. Michael hid the truth inside a story. Noah looked at the fireplace. "The lighthouse." He slowly repeated the sentence his father had whispered 20 years earlier. "The brightest lighthouse shines where no map can see." Silence. Nothing happened. Then, a deep metallic click echoed beneath the cabin. The floor trembled. Charles stepped backward. What was that? The stone fireplace slowly shifted several inches sideways. Dust poured from hidden seams in the floor. Behind it, a narrow steel staircase descended into darkness. Amelia whispered, "My God." Lucas stared in disbelief. "He built this himself." Ethan smiled sadly. "Michael never did anything halfway." Benjamin's notebook flashed one final message. "Welcome home." The group carefully descended. Motion-sensitive lights gradually illuminated the underground chamber. Everyone stopped. The room was enormous. Rows of steel shelves stretched across the hidden archive. Thousands of carefully labeled documents. Hard drives, boxes, photographs, financial records, newspaper clippings, audio tapes, video reels, maps. Every wall represented years of investigation. Grace covered her mouth. "My father. And did all this." Charles slowly walked between the shelves. "He documented everything." Amelia picked up one binder. Each page contained dates, bank transfers, shell companies, and personal notes written in Michael's neat handwriting. He wasn't collecting theories. He was building cases. Narrative exposition deepened the revelation. Michael understood that exposing organized financial crime required more than isolated evidence. One suspicious transaction could be dismissed as coincidence. One corrupt executive could claim ignorance. So he spent years connecting every document to another, building chains of proof that could survive courtroom scrutiny. Every ledger referenced another file. Every photograph pointed toward another witness. His archive wasn't a collection of secrets. It was a carefully constructed legal blueprint designed to dismantle an entire criminal enterprise piece by piece if the right people ever found it. Grace noticed an old video projector sitting alone on a wooden desk. Beside it rested an envelope. In her father's handwriting were 4 words. "For my children." Her hands shook. She opened the envelope. Inside was a film reel. Lucas quietly threaded it into the projector. The machine hummed to life. Static flickered across the white wall. Then, Michael Mitchell appeared. He looked older than Grace remembered. More tired. But he smiled warmly. "If you're watching this, then you found the cabin." Grace began crying. Michael looked directly into the camera. "I prayed you never would. But if you're here, it means events unfolded exactly as I feared." He paused, then smiled again. "Grace, if you're standing there, I already know you're trying to be stronger than everyone else." Grace laughed softly through tears. "That's Dad." Michael continued. "Noah, if you remembered the lighthouse story, I'm proud of you." Noah lowered his head. Michael's expression became serious. "Ethan, take care of my daughter. I trusted you long before you trusted yourself." Ethan quietly wiped away a tear. Michael looked toward the camera one final time. "And Benjamin, if you're alive, I thank you." The recording suddenly stopped. The projector clicked. Everyone exchanged confused glances. "That's it?" Lucas asked. "No." Amelia frowned. "The reel isn't finished." She restarted the projector. Instead of Michael, a security camera feed appeared. Live. Everyone froze. Someone was watching the cabin. Outside. Right now. A dark SUV sat nearly half a mile down the mountain road. Its engine idled silently. Charles whispered, "We've been followed." At that exact moment, several miles away in the dense forest, Benjamin Mitchell struggled to remain conscious. Blood soaked the bandage wrapped around his shoulder. His vision blurred. Footsteps approached. Benjamin reached weakly for his pistol. A calm voice interrupted. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be carrying a medical bag." A tall man in his early 60s emerged from the trees. Silver hair. Weathered hiking jacket. intelligent blue eyes. He slowly knelt beside Benjamin. Benjamin stared at him in disbelief. Adrian. The man smiled. It's been a long time. Benjamin could hardly believe what he was seeing. Michael said you disappeared. Dr. Adrian Kane began treating Benjamin's wound with practiced hands. I did. I disappeared because your brother asked me to. Narrative exposition introduced the new protagonist. Dr. Adrian Kane had once been one of the country's foremost experts in criminal psychology and trauma recovery. Years before Michael uncovered the syndicate, Adrian quietly assisted investigators in understanding how powerful criminals manipulated loyal followers and concealed financial crimes behind legitimate institutions. During Michael's investigation, the two men became trusted friends. When Adrian discovered someone inside the syndicate had begun targeting anyone connected to Michael, he willingly vanished from public life to protect the investigation. For 15 years, he lived under a different identity while secretly monitoring the mountain region surrounding Michael's cabin, waiting for the day the family might return. Benjamin managed a weak smile. You kept your promise. Adrian nodded. So did you. Far away inside a luxury penthouse, overlooking the city skyline, an elegant woman watched satellite images of Michael's cabin appear on multiple monitors. She wasn't angry. She was smiling. One of her analysts looked up nervously. They found the archive. The woman calmly closed a leather-bound book. I expected they would. Another analyst asked, should we move? She stood and walked toward the window. Not yet. She admired the city lights below. Then quietly said, let them believe they've finally found the truth. She smiled. They've only opened the first door. The camera lingered on her reflection in the glass. Before fading to black, the woman turned slowly from the window. For several seconds, only the soft glow of the city lights illuminated her face. She looked no older than 50, dressed in a simple charcoal suit with no jewelry except a silver watch. Nothing about her appearance suggested she commanded one of the most sophisticated criminal enterprises in the country. Yet every person in the room instinctively stood a little straighter. She glanced at the live drone feed showing Michael Mitchell's mountain cabin. They opened the archive. One analyst nodded nervously. Yes, ma'am. She closed the leather folder in her hands. Then Michael's final move has begun. The room fell silent. Her name was Catherine Sterling. Publicly, she was celebrated as the billionaire founder of an international investment company and a generous donor to hospitals, universities, and disaster relief organizations. Behind that carefully built reputation, however, she had spent decades using legitimate businesses and charitable foundations to hide fraud, money laundering, bribery, and corporate espionage carried out by a tightly controlled criminal syndicate. She believed two things above all else. Information was more valuable than money. Loyalty was more valuable than information. Narrative exposition reached into the past. Years earlier, Catherine had crossed paths with Nathaniel Cross while both served on the board of a prestigious legal foundation. Nathaniel possessed extraordinary discipline and legal brilliance. Catherine possessed unmatched financial vision. They eventually formed an alliance built not on friendship, but on mutual advantage. Nathaniel managed the syndicate's legal insulation and recruitment. Catherine built the financial machinery that kept it hidden. Even Victor Blackwood had never fully understood how much of the organization answered to Catherine rather than Nathaniel. She looked toward Victor, who had just entered the penthouse through a private elevator. You failed to keep Noah. Victor lowered his head. I underestimated Benjamin. No. Catherine calmly corrected him. You underestimated Michael. Victor remained silent. Catherine walked toward a large digital map. There, exactly where Michael wanted them. Victor frowned. You expected them to find the cabin. I expected Michael to prepare one. She smiled faintly. He always planned 3 moves ahead. Victor hesitated. Should I send another assault team? Catherine considered the question. Then she answered quietly. Yes, but not to recover the evidence. Victor looked surprised. Then why? She turned toward him. Destroy the cabin. The archive. The archive. Victor blinked. What if copies exist? Catherine smiled. They do. She paused. But they'll waste precious time trying to save the originals. At the cabin, the projector suddenly flickered back to life. Michael reappeared on the screen. This time his expression was far more serious. If the recording restarted, then someone is already coming. Everyone exchanged anxious glances. Michael continued. Listen carefully. I built this archive because evidence survives longer than memory. But if you're forced to choose, save each other, not the documents. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Dad. Michael smiled gently. I know that's not the answer you wanted. But I raised a family. Not archivists. The recording ended. A loud electronic beep echoed through the underground room. Amelia looked at one of the monitors. Several heat signatures appeared on the mountainside. They found us. Lucas immediately checked his weapon. How many? Amelia zoomed in. 12. Another screen refreshed. No. She swallowed. 24. Benjamin's notebook activated automatically. A map of escape routes appeared. One passage flashed green. Another flashed red. Charles frowned. The southern exit is blocked. Ethan looked toward everyone. We're leaving now. Grace hesitated. But Dad's work. Ethan gently took her hand. He already made the choice. Grace closed her eyes. Then nodded. You're right. Together, they began loading only the most critical hard drives and Michael's handwritten journals into waterproof packs. Above them, engines roared. Black SUVs surrounded the cabin. Men in tactical gear spread through the trees. A helicopter circled overhead. Miles away, Dr. Adrian Kane finished bandaging Benjamin's shoulder. You've lost a lot of blood. Benjamin struggled to sit up. I have to reach them. Adrian shook his head. You'll die before you reach the cabin. Benjamin grabbed Adrian's arm. They don't know who's coming. Adrian's expression darkened. I do. Benjamin looked at him. Adrian spoke quietly. Catherine Sterling doesn't recover evidence. She erases witnesses. Benjamin's face hardened. Then we're already late. Narrator's break. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. We're already over 400. Your support keeps stories like this coming. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, back to the story. The first explosion shook the cabin. Dust rained from the ceiling. Grace instinctively shielded Noah. Lucas shouted. They're planting charges. Another blast rocked the mountain. Wood splintered overhead. The lights flickered. Ethan slung the last backpack over his shoulder. Move! The family raced toward the emergency tunnel Michael had built years earlier. Behind them, shelves collapsed as decades of evidence crashed onto the floor. Grace stopped. One shelf had fallen across the passage. Beneath it lay Michael's original journals. the handwritten notebooks that contained every observation he had ever made. She stared at them, then remembered his words. Save each other. Tears streamed down her face as she turned away. The journals disappeared beneath falling debris. Outside, Catherine watched the live drone feed. She folded her hands. They're choosing family. Victor looked at her. You sound pleased. I am. He frowned. Why? Catherine answered without taking her eyes off the screen. Because people are predictable. But predictable people can be trapped. At that exact moment, another explosion ripped through the mountainside. The tunnel ceiling cracked. Massive beams groaned. The escape route began collapsing behind Ethan and the others. Ahead, only darkness remained. Behind, the mountain itself was starting to come down. And as Grace looked back one last time at the cabin her father had built with his own hands, she had no idea that the next few minutes would change her family's life forever. The mountain roared. It wasn't the sound of an explosion anymore. It was the sound of an entire hillside giving way. Concrete cracked. Steel beams twisted. Ancient pine trees snapped like matchsticks as the shockwave rolled across the valley. Inside the collapsing escape tunnel, Ethan grabbed Grace's hand with one hand and Noah's shoulder with the other. Run! No one looked back. The air filled with dust so thick they could barely see each other. Lucas took the lead, using his flashlight to guide them through the narrowing passage. Charles supported Amelia after a falling beam grazed her leg. Every few seconds, another section of the tunnel shook violently. Behind them, Michael Mitchell's hidden archive, the life's work he had sacrificed everything to build, was disappearing beneath thousands of tons of rock. Narrative exposition returned briefly to Michael's final decision. Years before his death, Michael had quietly designed the tunnel with one heartbreaking compromise. He knew he could not build a structure capable of surviving a deliberate demolition without drawing suspicion. Instead, he built an escape route that would buy his family only minutes. When he finished pouring the last section of reinforced concrete, he stood alone beneath the mountain and whispered to himself, "If this place ever falls, let it fall after my children are already gone." Michael never intended the archive to outlive his family. He intended his family to outlive the archive. A thunderous crack echoed ahead. Lucas stopped abruptly. The tunnel had split. A massive slab of concrete blocked most of the passage. Only a narrow opening remained. One at a time, Lucas shouted. Charles squeezed through first. Then Amelia. Noah followed. Grace pushed him from behind. Keep going. Ethan turned to help Grace through. At that exact moment, another explosion shook the mountain. The remaining support beam snapped. A section of the ceiling collapsed between them. Ethan! Grace screamed as rocks crashed to the ground. Ethan lunged forward, barely catching her fingertips. For one desperate moment, they held on. I've got you. Grace struggled against the weight of the collapsing debris. More rocks rained around them. Ethan! No! He tightened his grip. I'm not letting go. Lucas crawled back toward them. The ceiling is coming down. Charles shouted from the other side. Ethan! We have seconds. Grace looked into Ethan's eyes. The panic slowly left her face. She smiled through tears. You promised my father. You'd protect the children. I'm protecting you too. Another violent tremor tore through the tunnel. The ground beneath Grace began collapsing. She could feel herself slipping. Ethan! Listen to me. No. You have to let me talk. She smiled softly. You made me happier than I ever dreamed possible." His tears streamed freely now. "Stop talking like this." She looked past him toward Noah. "Take care of my little brother." Then toward the twins waiting safely at the farmhouse. "And tell our Bobbies." Their mother loved them every single day. Ethan shook his head violently. "We're leaving together." Grace squeezed his hand. "I know you'll keep fighting." Another section of the ceiling crashed down. Lucas grabbed Ethan around the waist. "We have to move." "I won't leave her." Grace whispered. "You won't." Her wedding ring slowly slipped from her finger into Ethan's palm. "I'll always be with you." Then, her hand slipped away. "Grace." She disappeared into a cloud of dust as the tunnel collapsed between them. The mountain fell silent. Noah screamed his sister's name. Amelia covered her mouth in horror. Charles closed his eyes. Lucas slowly lowered his head. Ethan stared at the wall of rock separating him from Grace. He didn't move. He couldn't. Everything inside him shattered. Minutes later, emergency sirens echoed through the valley. The surviving members of the family emerged from another hidden exit nearly half a mile away. Ethan never looked back. He couldn't. Not because he had stopped loving Grace, but because if he looked toward the mountain, he knew he would run back into it. Miles away, Catherine Sterling watched the thermal drone feed. One operator spoke quietly. No heat signatures remain inside the collapse zone. Victor looked toward Catherine. "The woman is dead." Catherine remained silent. She watched the screen for several more seconds before closing the tablet. "Perhaps." Victor frowned. "You don't believe it." Catherine answered calmly. "I don't believe in assumptions." Far from the mountain, inside an abandoned forest ranger station, Dr. Adrian Kane finished stitching Benjamin's wound. Benjamin suddenly sat upright. His expression changed. "What is it?" Adrian asked. Benjamin's eyes filled with dread. "Grace." He couldn't explain why. He simply knew something terrible had happened. Back at the mountain, rescue crews searched through burning debris. Hours passed. Then another. They found broken furniture, destroyed shelves, pieces of Michael's journals, but no sign of Grace. As dawn painted the sky gold, Ethan stood alone overlooking the smoking ruins. Noah walked beside him. Neither spoke. Finally, Noah reached into his pocket. He pulled out the small family photograph Benjamin had once carried. It had somehow survived. Michael, Benjamin, Grace, Noah, together. Ethan held the picture against his chest. "I'll bring her home." His voice was barely audible. "No matter what it costs." The camera drifted toward the shattered mountain. Deep beneath the collapsed cabin, a weak cough echoed through the darkness. A hand slowly emerged from beneath broken timber. Not Grace's. Someone else's. Heavy footsteps approached. A flashlight beam cut through the dust. A shadowy figure knelt beside the unconscious woman trapped beneath the debris. The stranger carefully checked her pulse, then whispered, "She's alive." Before her face could be seen, the stranger lifted her into the darkness. No one outside the mountain knew. Not Ethan. Not Noah. Not Benjamin. Not even Catherine Sterling. Grace Mitchell had survived, but she had just fallen into the hands of someone whose identity remained a mystery. End of Part 4. Grace is alive, but who rescued her and why? If you enjoyed Part 4 so far, please consider subscribing and helping the channel reach 1,000 subscribers. Every subscription helps the channel grow and makes it possible to bring you the next chapters of this story. Also, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has reached. Thank you for reading.